It
would
would
they
go through the
deem that
courts to the
the
Supreme Court, and then they would have to deem it constitutional or unconstitutional. If
Thank
they,
you for
even if,
walking all the
even,
way
even
around
if,
to
even
agreeing
if,
with me, you fucking
no,
idiot.
it's not
Oh my
agreeing with you.
god. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Rinyald. And if you disagree with anything in the video, make sure you join the Discord and we can have a chat sometime. How's it going? 50 Tyson.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
I'm good.
Do you disagree with the prompt?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie though. Like, if you're gonna you want to talk about like the prompt itself, or like, can we actually like get like a topic going or something?
I mean, we can take it wherever you want to. If you support Trump, then tell me why you support Trump.
Yeah. Aside for like why I voted for him, I guess I would like kind of like say like the conversation could go like I was gonna ask you a question if that was okay, and
Yeah, sure.
all right. So I was gonna ask, where in the Constitution does it actually say? Because a big thing of Trump is that people are saying is like he's a dictator, and
Mm-hmm.
it's going against the Supreme Court's rulings and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the Constitution does it say that Donald Trump, or that any executive, or that the executive branch or legislative branch for that matter, is subject to the rulings of the Supreme Court or the judicial branch? Where
So
in the Constitution are those
technically,
powers listed?
technically that was founded in Marbury v. Madison, which said that any
Yeah.
action repugnant of the
Mm.
Constitution cannot stand, which I think is implicit in the Constitution. It doesn't
Well, that's in the
explicitly.
Constitution. What? Yeah, Marbury versus Madison was more about them establishing judicial review, where the
Right.
court actually, right, the Supreme Court judicial branch gave itself a power that wasn't actually enumerated in the
But
Constitution,
the
which
problem
is a
is that
problem unto itself.
if the Constitution does not have some way of telling what action is or isn't Constitution, then the Constitution doesn't exist.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
The
It
Constitution has to
vests.
presuppose that. Yeah.
Yeah, really quick. It vests the power of interpretation to the legislative and executive branches, along with the judicial. Yeah,
No.
you don't think that? Hold on. So you don't think that the Constitution of the United States, as it was written before 1803, before Marbury versus Madison, you
Mm-hmm.
don't think that that document listed interpretive powers of the Constitution for the executive branch?
It depends on what definition of interpretive you're saying.
Yeah, so interpretive meaning that the executive branch could interpret the Constitution to mean a certain thing and then take action based off that interpretation. And the purpose of the Constitution and checks and balances was
Mm-hmm.
to allow the branches to check each other on their interpretations if they had differing interpretations.
So
So, for example,
what's the point of the Supreme Court then?
at its creation, the point of the Supreme Court was literally to like oversee I believe like interstate conflicts that arose between states,
Mm-hmm.
and also officiate over like federal law cases. That was the original. The Supreme Court's job originally was not to interpret the Constitution and have the executive branch and legislative branch listen to their interpretation. That
Mm-hmm.
was never the original point of the Supreme Court. There's nowhere in the
Who do you
Constitution that
think?
that power is given. So how could that ever be their original purpose?
Because it's necessitated that there needs to
No.
be a check, like
Okay, so really
otherwise.
quick. Yeah, if the founding
No,
fathers,
wait,
yeah,
hold
really
on, hold
quick.
on, hold on, hold on. No, don't say really
Okay,
quick. Like you're, I need to talk. Okay.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, what is the point of outlining the powers of the presidency if the president can just interpret it away? Like
So
if there's
yeah,
no
so
means to hold the president accountable judicially, then
right.
what's the point of enumerating particular powers to the president?
Actually, no. Well, actually, that's exactly why you enumerate them and you literally list them out and you go, these are the these are the powers that you have, and any powers that are not given here and that are not given to the legislative branch or judicial branch through this document, that is left up to the states and the people. That's what the document says. And so, if you're talking
Okay.
about interpretation, yeah, okay. So, if you're talking about interpretation, when the executive branch interprets the Constitution to think whatever the president wants it to think. Let's say the president thinks it
Mm-hmm.
means A, and then the legislative branch thinks it means B,
The
and the
legislative
judicial
branch
branch
has
also.
no ground in interpreting constitutionality in
Well,
anything.
what? Wait, hold on. You think the legislative branch doesn't have interpretive powers as well as the executive branch and the
How would
and
the legislative interpret the Constitution?
yeah, because they have to make laws that are constitutional. So they have to therefore interpret
Okay.
the Constitution.
I
So
guess in that roundabout way,
if I
yeah,
have to do,
sure. The president needs to
that's
interpret the
literally. I mean, you're
Constitution,
calling it roundabout. That's literally what the Constitution says. It
but they
says that
have, but
they have to make laws that are constitutional. Who would obviously, if I'm telling you to do something
sure.
in a good way, right? If I give you the power to do something in a good way, I
But
say, here, I want you to do it. Hold
their
on, bro.
rulings
Hold
on
on,
what
bro.
is
Hold on, bro.
constitutional does not interact with any of the three other branches.
Exactly. No, that's exactly how it should have been. It should have been that if the legislative branch thinks something is unconstitutional, but the executive branch thinks that it is constitutional, they have the
Hmm.
checks on each other, but they were never supposed to be able to actually go into each other's branch, into each other's section, and actually make each other do
That's
anything. There was
absolutely not true.
that's absolutely true. When you can look at
We
this as
literally have a system of checks and balances. How would one
yeah,
branch check
exactly.
another? No, no,
That's
no.
how they
How
would.
would one branch check another
Yeah,
branch if they're not
that's
supposed to
exactly.
interact with each other?
No, I didn't say that they're not supposed to interact. Now you're strawmanning what I said. I said that they're not supposed to go into each other's branches and dictate what they do. If the executive branch does something, this is how it's supposed to go. If the
That's the
executive branch,
definition of a
hold
check.
on, no, exactly. There's supposed to be checks. I'm not arguing
No,
against
no, no.
checks and balances,
You're
bro.
saying there should be checks and balances, but no branch should tell any other branch what to do. That's
Yeah,
what a check is. That's
no,
the
that's
point of a
not what a
check.
check. No, that's not. No, hold on. So let me explain, and then you'll understand what I'm saying at least, bro. A check
Okay.
and a balance was supposed to be this. If the executive branch interpreted the Constitution to mean a certain thing and took a certain action, the legislative branch nor the judicial branch was ever supposed to have the power to say, we think that they were supposed to have the power to review it amongst themselves and have their own interpretation of it, but they were not supposed to have the power to go into the other branch and take from their powers that are enumerated in the Constitution. This is why there's a separation of power. For
They're
example, the president.
not.
Wait, hold on. They are separated. What are you? They're not
No,
separated.
they're separated. The judicial is not taking away like constitutionally allotted
Exactly, because it was
power.
never. No, yes. Wait, what do you mean? Yes, they are. If when the
What?
judicial branch goes now, when the okay, so now look, the judicial branch has the power to legislate basically now on what the Constitution
No, they
means, and then
don't.
yes, you don't think the judicial branch is a super legislative body?
No,
Okay, so so in Marbury versus Madison, they weren't being a
yeah,
legislator. Yeah,
no,
and okay, wait, hold on. So
no.
Marbury
They were
versus
interpreting
Madison.
they were interpreting Article 3 in the Judiciary Act.
No, they were interpreting I can't remember the exact name of the law, but basically
The
they
Judiciary
interpreted that.
Act.
Oh no, I'm sorry, you said it. The Judiciary Act. Yeah,
Yeah.
they interpreted democratically legislated on law, right? The Judiciary Act
Hmm.
was passed by Congress. That is the will of the people, right? Congress carried out its
Sure.
constitutional power to
Hmm.
legislate on that law, right?
Hmm.
So whatever gave the judicial branch the power to go and say that that is what the people voted for, what the people legislated on is unconstitutional. Whatever gave the Supreme Court that power to say that?
Do you think that the people could never vote on something that's not unconstitutional?
I'm not saying that they
Like if the
couldn't or they
legislator,
could. Answer the no, no, hold on, bro, because you're running from the question.
if the
Hold
legislature
on,
votes
bro.
for a law that's against the Constitution, do you think this court should just let that stand?
If the legislator votes against the law,
If the legislature votes to pass a law that is repugnant of the Constitution, should the judicial just let it stand?
yeah, yes, because there are no powers in the Constitution
Okay, you're
that
just
are given to
devolving
do.
that. Then the
Hold on,
Constitution
hold
can't
on, bro.
exist.
Hold on. Yo, no, yes, it
If
can,
the
and I can explain
legislature
why.
if the
Yes, it can, and
legislature
I can explain why. I can explain why,
if
sir.
no, let me make this
Because the
point. Let me make this
powers
point
were
before you
already
explain.
separated.
Yeah, just keep
Bro,
talking,
you're not
buddy.
even letting me talk. You're not even letting me talk, bro. The
Okay,
powers were
so
already separated. The legislative branch holds the power of the purse for a reason. The executive branch holds the power of the sword, right? The power of the army for a reason. If the executive branch decided to use the army to do something that was unconstitutional, they couldn't do it because of the check and balance that is in place of the legislative branch holding the purse. That is a check right there.
okay, so I already presupposed the question. That's why, because I knew all of that was going to be completely fucking irrelevant. I presupposed that the piece of
What?
legislation that they passed. Yeah, please interrupt me again. I'll just play the song again.
Oh God.
So I presupposed in the question the piece of legislation is against the Constitution. It's repugnant of the Constitution. What happens when the legislature just
Okay, according to who though?
blatantly
Like
violates the
interpreted by who?
Constitution?
Interpreted by, you're saying it's against the
It's like the
against
clearest
the
example in the
Constitution.
world. It says that
According
we
to
can. It
who?
says that we take control of the military arm of the government. That's
Okay,
what the
so you're
piece of
saying that.
legislation
Okay,
says.
so
What
which
happens?
branches? Okay, so which branches of the government deem it to be unconstitutional?
The executive and the judicial.
Okay, so the thing. Okay, so the thing is that they all have the power to deem it unconstitutional.
Okay,
The
what
problem is
happens?
that.
What
Hold on.
happens?
Yeah, I'm gonna explain to you what happens because this already happened. So you're talking about, just to be clear, and I'm getting the question right. You're saying if you said the legislative or executive branch.
We're saying, oh my god, okay. We're saying the
Really quick, one more time, just one
legislature.
more
We're
time.
saying that Congress passes a law saying that the president no longer controls the military, and it's actually Congress.
Okay.
What happens?
Well, the president holds the power of the military through the Constitution. So
Yeah,
the
Congress
president
just
would
passed a law
interpret.
saying that he doesn't.
Yeah. Okay.
How
So
does that
yeah.
law get voided?
So let me tell you. The president interprets that law or interprets the Constitution because everything has to be in reference to the Constitution. So
Mm-hmm.
even if the legislator passes a law, right? If the
Mm-hmm.
president deems it to be unconstitutional and against the Constitution, he still has the powers enumerated in Section 2 to defend his interpretation of the Constitution.
Yeah, this means the
That would come
Constitution
with
is a piece of paper.
a
This means that
suspension.
all
That
three.
can come with a suspension of
No,
habeas corpus.
this is the
That
stupidest
can come with
fucking
many
thing in the
things.
world. This means that all three branches just interpret
How
the
is it stupid?
Constitution
How
separately,
is
and
it
there's
stupid?
no
Yes.
anything back like linking them
No,
together.
there is
That's
something. There is
insane.
something bringing them together. What's bringing them
You're
together is
telling
the
me.
checks and balances.
So
What's
okay,
bringing them together is checks and balances.
no, that's not checks and balances. This is just three
Yes, that is.
co-independent.
Yes, that is.
These branches aren't
That's
interacting in
literally
the.
what they are. That's literally what they are. They're
What is the check
co-independent.
that's happening there? What's the check that's happening there?
The check that's happening where?
The Congress passes a law saying the president doesn't control the military anymore. We do.
Yes.
And then the president
Yes.
interprets saying, no, I do. What's the check that happens there? What check
Yeah,
happens?
the check is already in the Constitution. The check is that the president has the authority over the military. That's
That's
the
not
check.
a check. That's a sentence.
It is.
How
Because,
do you
okay,
how
so,
do you
so let's-
practically
so-
check? How do
yeah,
you get that law out? How do you get that law out?
He wouldn't have to get it out. It would just be unconstitutional.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So then it would go to the judicial branch. Would have the check on, right, because of judicial
Wait,
review.
they would have the check how? They would have the
They
check
would
how?
have the check on the legislative branch through
How?
judicial review.
How?
Through judicial
What would they
review.
do? What would they do? Would
It
they
would go through the
deem
courts
that
to the Supreme Court, and then they would have to deem it constitutional or unconstitutional.
Thank you for walking all the way around to agreeing with me, you fucking
No,
idiot.
it's not
Oh my
agreeing with you.
God.
It's not agreeing.
Okay. I will say though, at least you had the courage to keep talking through I lost my way, all right? That was good. That was good. You just drove right through it. There's no amount of anything that could get through that skull of yours.